It's not boxing anymore if someone pulls out a brick.
Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Groves, normally with the On the Edge podcast, but today I have the great honor of filling in for my friend John Vroman. Anybody who's listened to a single episode of this or knows me at all knows that the Front Row Dads group, mastermind, podcast, everything about it has been a big life changer for me. So when John was going out of town for his annual European vacation, I don't even know where they are. I don't know if they're visiting the homeland of his lovely wife, Tatiana, which is Russia, or if they're going through the rest of Europe. Probably not Russia and the Ukraine right now, I would guess. So they're probably elsewhere in Europe. But John asked a bunch of us other podcasters. He's like, hey, man, will you guys step in and do a guest spot for me on the Front Row Dads podcast? So we got a little moniker made. We're here all official in the On the Edge podcast studio, but this is all about Front Row Dads. And Front Row Dads is all about, you know, family men with businesses, not businessmen trying to make time for their family. And a lot of the topics that they cover on the Front Row Dad podcast revolve around somebody that was crushing it in business and they had like lost touch with who they were as a father and a husband. And it's kind of this trying to reconstruct getting back into being a father and a husband. And I'm like, hey, let's take a little bit of a different twist on it. And let me invite my friend Patrick on, who took the other route that when they had kids, he said, you know what? I'm going to stay home with the kids. My wife crushes it. She's a doctor. She makes plenty of money for our family. Like, I want to be the stay-at-home dad. I want to do the cool projects. I want to take them to jiu-jitsu and gymnastics and the other million things that you do. And so today we're going to talk to a dad that's taken a non-traditional path, I would say, with the kids. And just welcome, man. I love you to death.
Hey, man, it's good to be here.
And our kids met at jiu-jitsu. That's one of the like 72 activities you have them in. So tell us what it's like to be like a stay-at-home dad from the beginning, or how that materialized. Because I know you're from Texas to Alaska to you've owned a bunch of businesses and you've done a bunch of stuff and you've had a really successful life. And then you're like, no, I'm going to put that aside for a while for my kids. Let my wife do the work for a while.
Yeah, you know, it's well, thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, I know. You've been in Alaska too long, man.
I know. Got to get you up there, man. Get you kayaking.
We're coming.
It'll be great. So I was a CrossFit coach at the time, teaching martial arts. Loved it. Met my wife. We had been friends for a while. We both ended up divorced. So we had kind of like taken care of all of like the hard, like back end work of like, do I like this person? You know?
Right.
We both ended up single. We got together. It was great. I'd gone back to college and, got divorced, kind of didn't know what I was doing with myself. And right as I was graduating, kind of getting ready to get full steam back into the workforce, we had Violet. So we had Violet, and I was finishing up my last semester at UT, and my wife got this insanely early promotion. She got an opportunity to be the director of medicine or emergency medicine at a hospital, and she was like 36, which is very uncommon. And
well, your wife's also exceptional. So
if she had joined the Air Force, she'd have been an astronaut, you know, hashtag flat earth, right?
Right.
But no, she's she's a top notch everything she does. And so she got this promotion, and the pay was great. The pay increase was great. It would have been more than I could have made going back to like the full-time workforce, but not massively.
Right.
But at 36, that's a golden ticket, right? And we kind of talked, and I was like, hey, you're going to be able to like write your own script from here on out. Like you can't turn this down. But it's a big learning process, right? Like, she's a doctor, but that doesn't mean you know how to do a schedule, manage people, right? And I had a lot of experience with that. So I kind of like served as her like conciliary, like,
right.
Like, hey, don't give everyone the schedule they want, this and that kind of thing. But it was a lot of work. The hospital that she started working at really needed help. So it became like an 18-hour-a-day job for her. And I was like, man, we can have like a full-time au pair. She can work her ass off. I can go to work full-time. So we were like, hey, this is not the right path for our family. I don't want other people raising my kids. She didn't want other people raising her kids, kind of situation. So I just kind of went to coaching part-time. Her schedule was so erratic, late nights, random calls, stuff like that. And family is real important to her, and it's real important to me. And I just kind of didn't want her to come home and not have the kids there, have to worry about everything that comes with running a house. Right. And so I was like, well, I'll just coach part-time, but listen, I'll take a step back. It was kind of awkward because I was used to working like 2 or 3 jobs at a time, just hustling, young man thing. And I just didn't want to see her like stressed all the time. And frankly, we didn't want to waste all the money on childcare, even if the childcare was great. Like it's expensive. Like every parent knows. And I was like, I want to be there for my kids. And there was kind of some more to that. Her dad was also a real successful physician, immigrant from Peru, made his way here. Kind of standard immigrant story. The dude worked like 1 million hours, and they had babysitters and stuff like that. And she didn't want that, and I didn't want that. So we kind of just sat down and made a decision. And I was like, listen, I'm not staying home. Like I can't do that.
Right? We're going to just sit on the couch and eat bonbons?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's not for me. So, I started training jiu-jitsu, got a whole bunch of like fitness certifications, stuff like that, kept myself busy. But Carla wants the kids in gymnastics. She can only pick them up once a week. I'll pick them up the other time, like that. I just kind of became like the zone defense for the family. And, now the kids are older and that's kind of wrapping up, but it was incredible. Like I was able to just like be there.
Hey, this quick interruption is brought to you by me, Scott Groves, the host of the On the Edge podcast. This podcast is brought to you by me. I'm a loan officer who can help you with a mortgage in all 50 states across the United States. I also coach loan officers. So if you are a home buyer who's looking to get a mortgage, if you're a realtor who's looking to partner with an awesome loan officer, or if you're a loan officer looking for coaching, get in touch with me. It's those sources of revenue that allow us to produce this podcast and get out a new episode to you every week for the last couple of years. So if you're looking for a mortgage, if you're looking for a mortgage lender to partner with, or you're looking for a mortgage coach, I'm your guy. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. As much as we've talked, everything you just walked through makes total sense in my mind for the mom, right? Because that's like the stereotypical story that you hear. Oh, mom, gave up her dreams or her this or her that to stay home with the kids because didn't want to be raised by somebody else. Childcare is so expensive. Right. And even as like open-minded as I think I can be, and as much as I love you and as much as I've seen it work, it still sounds weird when it comes out of your mouth, right? Because it's like, I know you have an entrepreneurial spirit. I know you had a bunch of like irons in the fire when you decided to give that up. What was there like a little bit of a, I don't know what the term is, ego death or something there? Like, because I feel you own it. When the first time I asked you what you do, you're like, what do I do? I'm awesome. My wife works and kills it. Yeah. And I get to work out and hang out with the family and do jiu-jitsu and I cook and I clean. I'm fucking the badass Mr. Mom. Right. And I know that you own that, but was there some weirdness when you're making that decision?
Somewhat, but it certainly, I think part of the problem when people say like stay at home, especially mom, is what that's usually attached to, is even if it's not intentional, there's kind of a condescension attached to it. Right. Like, oh, you're stay-at-home mom, like
Right.
you sitting on your butt, like, you know, or you working out to keep your husband happy, like, or whatever.
Oh, you're a kept woman, et cetera, et
all
cetera.
that. And you know, so when someone says that about like a dad, yeah, there's sort of more condescension attached to it, even if it's accidental.
Right.
And it usually comes from people who, by the time they're 60, they spend most every night like drinking too much and crying about the fact that they don't know their kids, right? So it's like a weird double-edged sword.
Right.
Like they, you know, I could never be a stay-at-home anything. And it's like, well, all right, you might want to try it. But for me, like, I don't know, my mom's family especially, they were all like country people, like farmers and stuff like that. So like a farmer's a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
He doesn't leave and go to work. He walks outside and starts working, and he's there for his kids, and he, you know, like is there for the family. So I would think there was some sort of, you know, some conscientious questioning of like, what am I doing? Especially because I was like working my ass off. I loved having all these different jobs and like being dynamic, and but it didn't really occur to me that like I was like, I'm not lactating. You know what I mean? Like I haven't turned into a female. Like I still turn wrenches every day. And maybe that was kind of the other thing is like being at home with my kids. Like I didn't turn into a lady. Right. Like I'm still a dad. I still like to lift weights and like hammer nails into stuff, you know? So I became like the project doer.
I've seen the work that you guys do on your Alaska house. That's more than a full-time job.
Right. That's all me. Right. Like, so someone's got to carry that water. So, and I just never really had a problem doing that. But also I know a lot of people that just, I mean, forget like your dad is busy and he's not around. Like there's just like a lot of kids without dads, like full stop. Like they're not present, and that sucks. Like those kids end up really confused in life. They don't understand like anything, you know, they're missing out on something usually. I'm not speaking for everybody. Hats off to all the single moms that kill it out there. You know what I mean? But I was like, I am not going down that path. Like my kids like need their parents, you know, and so that was kind of the energy, for lack of a better term, that we went into it with. And, you know, as like I said, this is kind of winding down. The kids are older. They're in school. It's not necessary. But what it's done is it's opened up the opportunity for me to, like, we bought an investment home in Alaska. I'm on the 40-foot scaffold, like sanding the log cabin to restain and chink it, right? Like that's me, not Carla, which is fine. She doesn't have to if she doesn't want to, but if I'm there for it, you know, that's just kind of my role. And that's sort of prototypically like a dad's job, right? Is to do all the, you know, who's going to carry all those 2x6s? Right. Me, you know what I mean? So like that just kind of became the role that I just sort of jumped right into. And like from the outset, I was like, it's just farm life. Right. You know, like, hey, the sink is leaking, you know, well, go turn the water off and take the kids to school, go buy a new sink, install a new sink, you know, like that became like what I did. And that now we're not spending $500 on a handyman. And
oh, I wish it was $500. Try to find like a plumber these days. Good luck.
No kidding. So like, and every time I did something like that, every time I cooked like a dope brisket, you know, like,
yeah, thanks for the meat, by the way.
Yeah, no problem, man.
It's amazing.
Happy to, bro.
I was about to trade my wife in for you when you brought over that brisket. I was like, oh, this is like the best meat I've ever had, hon.
Well, you from Austin, bro.
You gotta step it up, dude. But you know, I've been around both your daughters at jiu-jitsu. They're so tough. How much of that being around when dad's working, seeing the life skills, helping you carry the 2x4s, helping you turn the wrench? Because I get the feeling that Violet's going to intimidate a bunch of men when she gets older. Because she's
100%.
She is a tough gal.
100%.
You know, we were rock climbing and she's like just showing the boys up and like,
right.
You can tell she has the energy of somebody who grew up with dad.
Right.
So
right.
like, how much do you think she's just been stronger as a human being because you were around all the time?
I mean, I would like to take full credit for that. You know, she has my genes and her mom's genes, and her mom is like, you know, captain of the UT gymnastics team and like a scholarship rower, you know, so she's not unaccustomed to like hard work. Right. But yeah, it's definitely it's a difference, right? Like when a person has like a parent, I don't want to say like a dad, like that's kind of like one thing that encapsulates all men who have kids. But when a person has two role models, one of them is this like total like ass kicking, like professional physician, whatever, lawyer, CEO. And then they have someone that's like, hey, I bought you a bow today. Like, you want to learn to shoot a bow? Like they get both of those inputs, right? And so jiu-jitsu, that was my call. Carla knew I was a martial artist, you know, and I was like, hey, our daughters are not going to be easily rolled by dudes, especially when they go off to college or whatever. Like, I want them to be able to take care of themselves. And, you know, Carla saw the wisdom in that. But I was like the primary driver on that. And yeah, like you said, like you see dad like carrying stuff and like, no, get off the television, get out here and help me carry this sack of gravel, you know, like but if you go out into like middle America, not like economically middle, but like the middle of America where it's like farmers and stuff like that. Like there's girls out here riding horses, for real riding horses, you know, and like farm life. And that was just kind of what I was able to bring to her. And yeah, it's evident, like the kids that, I mean, you see it, like Violet is tall and beautiful and funny, and she's a goon, dude. Like,
yeah, she's a very feminine goon.
Yeah,
I love
exactly. She's so sweet, but like she'll double leg you. Like there's like watch your mouth, bro. Like there's no messing around. Like she got into an altercation. Like some kid was beating up some other kid. This was a couple years ago. Like ground and pounding him, and she like grabbed the kid, double legged him, and like mounted him. And she got in trouble for it. And I was like, Violet, you know, you really shouldn't be fighting in school. And she's in like second grade at the time or something like that. And, you know, she was like, I know, Dad, it was real sad. But, you know, this kid was like in fifth grade beating up on some first grader. And I was like, you double legged a fifth grader? It's like high five, like ice creams for everybody. You know what I mean? So
good job protecting your buddy.
Like, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that energy like definitely like made its way into the kids, and that's just due to like being present, like being in their lives, like showing them who you are. Right. Like, and you don't, like, kids don't learn through words, right? Like, you can't tell them how to act. You have to show them how to act. And, you know, and it's an interesting check on you, right? Because, like, if you're like, God, you should not do whatever it is, and then you go and eat candy when you told them not to or whatever, like, oh man, like I gotta put the candy down too or whatever, you know? So yeah, it definitely, but it also opened up a door for Carla, because I was able to, like, you know, their dinner's always on the table, but I'm not making salads. Like, I'm grilling steaks and, you know, I'm still boiling it up. Right. But, you know, she gets to come home and like have kind of free reign to like be mom with the kids. And so, but yeah, like that, it opened up that door for both of us to be there and like really have like an influence on those kids. But yeah, I did kind of turn them into goons a little bit.
That's all right.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I dislike about the modern, I don't know if I would call it feminist paradigm or whatever, is like we kind of created this weird thing where with my wife who stays at home, quote unquote, with the kids, there's almost this weird thing where like we got rid of the value of the homemaker, the mom,
right,
the nurturer, right, where it's like, oh, well, the only way that a woman can add value is like, oh, are they making money? Are they working? Are they a career woman? Are they this? And one, I don't know if that's what my wife wanted. And two, she gets just as much value, like emotionally and spiritually, staying home with the kids. And I'm like, yeah, exactly what you're describing with Carla. Like you've been able to support her in her career growth. I would not be where I'm at if it wasn't for my wife being able to be with the kids, And I've seen these things with Gary Vee where he's like, yeah, what's the ROI of your mom? Everybody's worried about return on investment and how much more they earning and where their earning potential. He's like, yeah, but what was the ROI of your stay-at-home mom? Like you're not a psychopath. You're not a serial killer.
Yeah. Right.
And so I'm guessing it's the same thing in your household where like Carla's been able to climb the corporate ladder because she knows she's supported at home. Stuff is taken care of. She doesn't have to leave work early to come home and cook dinner and shit like that because you're on top of it.
And you mentioned like the sort of like strange version of like 29-year-old feminism that's like kicking around right now. And like, I don't know, this is just observational. Like we both do jiu-jitsu, so we see a pretty big swath of younger, not so young to middle-aged people all coming through for different reasons, right? But you see a big cross-section of like the world, right?
All different socioeconomic,
absolutely, they're for different reasons, weight, fitness, like just everyone has their own reason for getting like choked for fun and enjoyment, right? Like it's a weird thing, but it brings in a lot of people. And there's these like weird, like competing like ideas that I've noticed, like I said, with these like 27-year-old hyper weird, it's hard to comprehend feminists, right? Because they're like, I want a job where I make like 6 figures because I'm badass and I'm intelligent, and that's great. If you are awesome and intelligent, you should have a job where you make 6 figures. Good for you. But you also weirdly want a dude who makes 6 figures plus 35 over what you make, which is still very like weirdly backwards, if that's your kind of footing, right? Then you get like the sort of like manosphere, like 25-year-old, like YouTube, like lib feminist roasted by based, whatever. And you're like, this guy like thinks all women should be stuck at home and men are supposed to like leave the house and like bring in like tons of cash. And it's like, bro, leaving the house for work is like a super new thing. Like everyone came originally from like family farms, and like the whole family was working as like a team, right? Like dad goes and yokes the oxen and plows the field. But today that's a good time for mom to like, spin some wool and like fix everyone's clothes. And, when she's not doing that, she's out pulling roots out of the field with dad, like everyone worked together. And we've kind of like, I've just observed that like we've gotten into this weird place where we're supposed to like be equal, but also separate. Like everyone's supposed to occupy some sort of role where like men must do this or like women must do that, or they're not men. Yeah. Right.
Like, or they're not equal. Like, I love that analogy of the team, because if you are working on a farm and the whole team is rowing in the same direction, where I think the modern dynamic is more about keeping score. Like, oh, I've got to make this much money, or I got to bring this much to the household. Right. It's like, I don't know, to your point, what's the value of being able to replace your own sink? Well, in today's economy, it's probably $5,000 by the time you flood the house and you spend 3 hours on the phone with the insurance, and then you have to find a plumber. I mean, it's a nightmare, right?
It's insane. And so, and that's like the old saying, I'm sure you would probably know who said it, or more likely to know who said it, but like, saving money is like paying yourself. Right. So like if we're all working towards the same goal, which is making sure our kids don't end up like criminals or end up like functioning members of society. Like if that's the goal, like sometimes the quarterback passes the ball, sometimes he hands it off, like you gotta score the points, right? And I think that weird like keeping score competition that I think is more prevalent with like younger, like late 20s types that haven't really seen the world, like it's kind of poisonous. Like it really damages like a lot of people's relationships. And if you look at your wife and you're like, I make all this money and she just stays at home, like you're already not on a team.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're already,
divorce is prevalent.
It's right there, bro. Like one day you're going to come home with that mentality and the house is going to be empty. Right. And that was one of the things. Maybe it's because Carla and I played sports. Like we understand, like everyone plays their role, and sometimes you got to flex, and sometimes you got to step back. But yeah, like I said, there's just sort of like I've just observed like there's like a poison in the water with a lot of these relationships, and you hit the nail on the head. Like people are trying to keep score with each other, and don't think for a moment that there weren't issues. Right. Like we had our arguments that got nasty, and, like money's tight, like it gets ugly like it does in every relationship. But I think what kind of like grounded me and Carla is like, I never felt like I was going to start, like I said, like lactating. Like I'm not a, I'm not a woman. Like,
you're like, honey, I know I wanted to buy a new truck. Is it okay? Or do I need to mop the floors first?
Right. Like, exactly. Like there was none of that, it was more just like, we're all doing what we can. And I don't parent like Carla does. Right. I'm still dad. Like I'm uniformly a disciplinarian. Nothing gets past me. Like do not pass go, and I kind of made the joke with Carla. I was like, I feel like, I don't know if I'm speaking for all dads, but I was like, most dads want love and affection, but they'll settle for respect. Most moms want respect, but they'll settle for love and affection. Just like with the disciplining and the way we interact with our kids, that's all the same. Like, wait till your father gets home is still something that is said 7 times a day in my house, right? Like, it's still like, we know who the hammer is, like, but I don't come home. And I think this is what, like a lot of young men, especially who might be in this situation, like, if I have to stay home, do I have to like wear an apron or like, Yeah,
you don't have to lose your masculinity just
because and I think that's sort of the problem is like, if you're wrapping your masculinity in this sort of like, do I wear a suit and tie every day and make 6 figures and never see my family? Like that's not a great way to go. And and we both know Casey, I remember him saying one day, like if his wife ever wanted to go back to practicing law, he'd be a stay-at-home dad in a heartbeat. Yeah. He loves his kids.
Dude, if my wife could replace my income tomorrow, I'd be doing jiu-jitsu 3 times a day, volleyball once a day. I'd be Mr. Mom. We'd have, I'd take over all the stuff my wife does, the science fairs and the this and that.
That's right. And look, dude, it's great because like when like I don't know what it's like when it's only mom at home, but when like dad is home, you're sort of like you're like my buddy. You're my ace. Like daddy's definitely going to let you have a little too much candy. And we're like, I know you got homework, but listen, the Lakers are playing tonight. Right. Like, you want to like, can we do it in the morning? You know what I mean? Like, and so there's definitely like I said, I'm still dad, but I think what my kids also are going to see, I hope that they'll see is like, look, you got to make clear-headed decisions about things, right? Like if you're a business person and you're making, I don't know, $200,000 a year and your wife gets cold called a job offer where she's going to make $240,000 a year and you're like, no, I'm not, like you're making a bad team decision. Like just objectively, a $40,000 bad team decision, right? And that was the decision that was facing us. Those weren't the numbers, but that's what it was. And it was like, yeah, there's no way to like look at this and think, yeah, I'll take care of the kids. Like you said, like I'm doing jiu-jitsu 3 times a day. Right. Like I'm coaching like wrestling at like a couple times a week at like the 10th Planet School that I started at. Like I'm still like kicking ass out there. I'm just also like, hey, look, guys, I got to be done by 3:30 because, you know, school is out and I got to go pick the kids up, you know, like, and it's like a joy. Like, you know, how awesome is it for you to like come into this room knowing your kids are like 12 feet away, like, and you said like bye to them and walked out the door and went to work, right?
Right.
Like, that's how farmers do it, right? That's how like everyone has always done it. And there's, like I said, so there's just like this weird like idea that like dudes, I think young dudes especially have, is like, if I don't go out of the house and work 80 hours a week, I'm not a man. And it's like, oh, that is not what defines you as a dad, like, or a family man, right? Like, it's team play. It's all team play. So, but yeah.
I love it. And how has your wife Carla had to adjust to the team, right? Because I'm sure she's an awesome mom. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I love about hanging out with you guys when we've got to is that both of you go out of your way to like compliment each other, right? You know, we were over at your house when you were barbecuing. Your wife couldn't stop talking about amazing cook, takes care of everything, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I just work. And then you're like, honey, stop being so humble. You do X, Y, Z, and you cry. You know, it was just really, it was really cute to see. Mm-hmm. But your wife's also very feminine. She's very maternal. Yeah. And so being away from the kids as much as she did for work, what were the adjustments for her? Was there ever a moment where like, I don't know how to describe it other than like, was there this twinge of jealousy of like, 100%. Oh, Patrick gets all this time with the kids and I'm just grinding away at the office.
Yeah. And not was there, like that was like the first like 3 or 4 years of like Violet's life, especially because, you know, she missed the kids. She wanted to have a family, you know, and this opportunity came along and sort of like on paper, she made the right decision, right? Like for long-term, like benefit to the family. But moms like being with their kids.
Right.
Like uniformly, right? Like I don't know if that's uniform, but most
should
moms,
be, yeah.
Yeah, most moms feel really strongly about being with their kids. And it was hard for her because like she would look at me and I'm like, God, these kids, man. Because I'm a dad. I don't know if it's just me, but I think a lot of dads, men, don't have the patience threshold for some of the, like, I'm not as nurturing as my wife is.
Right.
I don't know if that applies to everybody, but I know for me, I kind of fall into that more like prototypical, like masculine energy, I guess is the right way to put it, of like,
figure it out, just do it, we'll
exactly.
Be fine.
Like, oh, like I remember one time Violet fell down and she ate it. Right. And, they were all like, I was at like a park or something, and Carla was there with me, and Violet fell down, and she hit the deck, and she started crying, and I was like, "Well, come on over here," and I like didn't run to her, and Carla was like, "Why didn't you go pick her up?" And I was like, "Because I wanted to see if she could walk." And then she got over to me, and she was like, "Dad, I fell," and I was like, "Yeah, you're fine." And I know you were fine. You walked over here, like,
right.
Go play, like, get away from me. Like, I'm talking to your mom.
Right.
But so that's like a much more like dad vibe, right? A much more paternal vibe. So I would just get like exhausted with these kids, and like just Carla would be so upset with me. Like, I would love to be home with these kids, and I'm like, I know you would, but you're not.
Right.
Like, I'm doing my best. Like, I am not cut out for this the same way you are.
Right.
Like, as much as you hate being away at work, I am not good with this crying shit. Like, just the yelling. And can we cuss? Like 500 times. But like, I am not good at this. Like, I'm really getting annoyed with the constant, like, why are you crying? Carla would be like, well, she's 9 months old. And I'm like, that's no excuse. Yeah. Right. Like, what's wrong with her? She's get it together, get a job, you know? But you know, I had to explain to her, I was like, I'm giving up a lot from like my perspective to be here and doing this so that our family, like, we're both making sacrifices. And I know it's hard for you. It's hard for me. We're all trying to learn this, figure this out. But when we started having those conversations, I was like, Carla really hates to come home and see that the kids' room is messy. I'm not cleaning that room. It's not my mess. I didn't do that. But I made sure that the kids knew, hey, before mom gets home, y'all are cleaning your room. And if you're not, you got to deal with her. Like, you don't get to see, mommy wants to come home and just play, right? And nurture you guys and do bath time or whatever it was. And I'm trying to facilitate that for y'all. But, you know, some decisions have to be made on your part to make sure that this happens. But we figured out how to have like a dad make sure that a mom could have like mom time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like long story short, like we had to like kind of break through all of those. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It was hard for her. She's a pediatrician. Like, she loves kids.
Right.
Like, inherently. And so not to be there with the kids was super hard on her. So we had to get through some of the angst, get through some of the frustrations and kind of come to realize that we can get through it, but it is not going to be easy. And we're both working on it, but it did hurt for a while for her. Like, it was not easy with the stress of like becoming a director.
Right.
Like, totally new gig. She spent her whole life trying to be a doctor. Now she's in administration.
Right.
Like, this is not what she signed up for. She's drinking from a fire hose. Like, you take all that stress and the postpartum and the, do we want to have more kids? And then we're talking about money, and it's hard, And so I just kind of like, was it like you pick up your cross and bear it, And I was like, well, we got to make this work. And, part of that took us understanding where each other was coming from. But again, bro, that's teamwork, And we were able to just figure it out, and it's clearly paid off because our kids are awesome.
Yeah, kids are awesome. Mean? Finances are great. Like, you guys have made great family decisions.
Right.
I do have a question going back to that clean room, because I can count the number of serious marital fights or disagreements my wife have had in 9 years on like one hand. They're not big, but there are a couple strange things, like the cleaning of the room. This isn't one of us for us because we're both neurotic about things being clean and tidy. Yeah. So that worked out well. But there are certain things where it's like, for me, that would be a line in the sand I would just never draw. I'm like, this is the thing we want to go nuclear on every morning.
Yep.
And for Karina, there's things that she would be like, oh no, I'm willing to go to the mat and die for this, and vice versa.
This is the line.
And so the most recent one, I'm wondering how you guys deal with these things where somebody has their line. My wife was this was every morning for like 6 months. They wake up and they fight about what shoes Gabriel can wear to school, because he wants to wear the brand new Nikes or whatever. And she's like, no, those are your new shoes. Those are your nice shoes.
Right.
We can't get those dirty. And I'm not kidding, man. Every morning it was like World War III at our house over who's wearing what shoes. And finally I pulled Karina aside and I'm like, listen, you grew up in a very, very frugal, lower middle class or poor Hispanic family where having your clean pair of shoes for church Sunday was super important.
Yeah, those are church clothes.
I'm like, they're church clothes. So I get where you're coming from, and I understand why you're like emotionally attached to this.
Right.
But we don't go to church.
Right.
And I'm like,
exactly. What is the problem?
I'm like, so either leave the kid alone because, one, you guys are fighting every day and I don't want to hear it.
Right.
Or two, start going to church. So she started going to church. Checkmate.
Yeah,
damn it.
Exactly.
So then I had to sit down. Then it got me. So then I had to sit down with Gabriel and be like, okay, buddy, now I need to explain to you why you need a clean pair of white shoes at all times. And you can no longer wear those Nikes to school and scuff them up. And so when you guys have those line in the sands where it's like, no, I got this. I'm staying at home. I'm the one dealing with it. And she's like, no, but this is really important to me.
Right.
How do you navigate that, sticking with the teamwork mentality?
Yeah. Well, and Carla and I are both forceful personalities.
You guys are both a little opinionated.
We have opinions of things, and sometimes we argue both as people and with one another on principle. It seems like we just, we just draw lines in the sand and we're not giving up on them. Right. And so, and that was part of our, like, that was part of what we had to figure out coming together. Like her, I don't know, spirit or whatever, like her personality was definitely part of what drew me to her. Right. So when I was like, oh, you are like absolutely losing your mind over something that seems absolutely ridiculous to me. Right. Like,
right.
I have no idea why this is a problem. Like,
right.
Zero. But I can tell it's very important to you because of all the slamming. Right.
Right.
Like, so, all right. Well, also, man, I signed up for this. Right. Like, I was like, I knew what I was getting into. And after a few years, she kind of realized that she knew what she was getting into. Right. So the first thing we kind of did was we stopped taking it as personally. Right. Especially when you are as articulate as both she and I are, we can cut each other pretty deep. Yeah. You know, with what we say. Like we can get at it if we want to, right? And we used to really go at it. Not so much anymore because first of all, look, I love you. You make absolutely zero sense to me right now. But that doesn't mean it's not important, and I love you, so I'm going to just, like, half the time just be like, hey, this is what mommy wants. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is really important to her.
This is really important to her, and, you know, there are times when I am, like, getting in those kids, like, just getting in their asses like a wedgie, right? Like over something. Some sort of like disrespect, and I have some sort of big philosophical reason why you should never speak to your elders this way or something. And she used to like try to like interrupt me and stuff like that. And she finally just realized, she was like, you know what? This guy's a great guy. I have no idea why he's pissed about this, but it's probably for a good reason, because I wouldn't have had kids with this guy if I didn't trust his instincts, right? So those were like the first steps that we made. And then we just like had to learn to let shit go. Like I think that's really like the hardest thing for people in a marriage to do, is like, man, do you really want to die on this hill? You know what I mean? Like, mom's going to lose her mind if the living room is messy when she comes through the door. She likes tidy. I don't care about tidy as much, but she really likes tidy. I think it's unnecessary, but I love my wife. It's super important to her. So you know what? Hey, kids, mommy wants the house clean. And if y'all don't do it, she's going to blow like a volcano when she comes through the door. And that's not what y'all want to do, because y'all, it's 30 minutes till bedtime when she walks through the door. So you better have this room clean or whatever. Right. So we just kind of learned to like let the other lead, especially when it seemed important. And then after 10 years, like I've kind of learned to see the wisdom in why she feels that way. Right. And she's learned to see the wisdom in why I feel that way. You know, Carla never really understood why I didn't want stuff like the kids going into the garage or things like that. It's like, why not? You know, what a stupid thing to like get mad at the kids over. Then she saw my daughter playing with my miter saw. Right. And then she was like, oh, that explains all of the frustrations. Like I didn't want the kids coming into our bedroom because guns live in there, right? Or whatever it is, you know? And my mentality was, I don't have to explain everything to you. You're 6. Like, I don't care what you think. Just stay out of my room. That's the rule. But by that same token, she was like, maybe you should explain as they get older why. And I'm like, I don't have to explain anything. They're kids. Right. But she's right. Like, you know, like I'm right. They should not come in the room, but I can't just like pass down mandates that like make no sense, you know? So once we kind of got in that groove of like understanding, you know, if it's important to you, it should be important to me. Right. All right. Well, then I guess it's important to me. Right. And it doesn't have to make sense. And I also don't have to say, this doesn't make any sense, but I support you. Right. It's just what you want. Like, okay. Like, we're a team. You know what I mean? Like,
and you know, one of the things we've been talking a lot about is like, how important it is for you to have daughters. They grow up in the outdoors, and you guys have this beautiful house in Alaska, even though you live down here in Las Vegas, because that's where your wife's job is.
Right.
But your wife's making a huge, okay, he must have some wisdom in that, because you guys are going to move back to Alaska and just kind of come back and forth. Why is that super important for you to have your daughters grow up like basically like mountain men? Because I've seen your house out there. I mean, when you have to walk to the school bus stop with a large 45 just in case you come across a bear, that's a different type of lifestyle than most city dwellers are used to.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, so we moved up there right before COVID became COVID, right? And then we got kind of stuck up there because COVID became COVID. Like everything like melted down real fast everywhere, right? And Carla knew I liked the outdoors. When we were dating, we'd go camping a couple times. We'd hike, but we're from Texas originally. And from Austin. So by the time she got to Austin, like a lot of the natural, like Texas hill country had just kind of turned into suburbs. Like my parents' and grandparents' property is like a golf course now, but I used to like hunt deer out there when I was a kid and go, I went dove hunting out there, Yeah.
Now it's the 16th.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, she knew I was kind of raised fishing and doing outdoor stuff, but in some ways I think she just chalked that up to, oh, he's a boy. Like he likes boy stuff, you know, whatever. But she's pretty rough and tumble, and so she would always go hiking and camping with me when we could. But I was kind of an advocate for getting out of the city. Like, just something always told me, like, millions of people around you, it's just not, that's not right. Like, it's not good for your head. Like, I couldn't really articulate it right. But we went up to Alaska and the girls just blossomed. Like, they flourished. And maybe I hope I'm not speaking for her, but she just saw it. She was like, oh, this is what he was talking about. Like, they can be kids here. Like, when we're down here, the concern is like, why don't you have Jordans? Right?
Yeah.
But when you're in Alaska, the part of Alaska where we live, you've got Target, like Bass Pro Shops, and REI, and Fred Meyer, which is like a grocery store with that sells clothes.
It's like a super Walmart.
That's exactly right. And, so you, like, any day of the week, you'll see like 3 kids with the same clothes on.
Right.
Like, because there are 4 places you can shop. Statistically, everyone's going to have the same clothes on eventually, right? And stuff like that is not as important up there. We have friends that like spend their winters because it's super dark. They're like, it's pretty dark out here. There's nothing really to do. I guess I'm going to learn how to cross country ski. Take the kids with you, and like, oh man, it's going to be a pretty day tomorrow. Let's go ice fishing.
Right.
The way that you see things, like the value of things changes when you're not like overcome with other stuff that you would especially get in a major metropolitan, right?
Right.
And so, the girls hauling firewood, it's hard to teach kids like the value of chores unless the house is 10 degrees below zero.
Right.
And if you don't bring the wood, we don't have a fire, right? So you should go back downstairs and get the wood. But it's cold and snowy. I know, and it's cold in here too.
Right.
Because you haven't brought the wood in for Daddy to start the fire, right? These things become like eminently more important.
Right.
Right. And so that was why I wanted to go up there. It was kind of a wing and a prayer, you know. I just liked the outdoors, and we had looked at like Asheville, North Carolina. We had thought about Oregon. We thought about like Washington, and Alaska was sort of like the last, like it was like the pie in the sky. Like we went there and we're like, let's see if Alaska would work. We've heard it's beautiful, and we were just completely overcome by it. Like it was just beautiful. Carla was just like witnessing majesty left and right, like mountains, and like we have a river on our property. Like,
yeah, like you guys can see Mount Denali from your front porch.
Right, exactly. Like it's nuts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
your pictures from your porch look like everybody's screensaver. Like all the city dwellers that want to pretend like they're the outdoors by having screensavers of nature. And,
right.
And there's look across from my porch. There's a bear in the stream catching salmon with Mount Denali in the backyard.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, that's actually your front porch.
No,
I was like,
yeah.
Oh.
Like, and you know, we had a moment this last summer. We'd put the girls in like a Girl Scout camp type thing, and Penelope refused to wear bug spray. And like, if you don't know, like the mosquito is like jokingly the state bird of Alaska. Right. Like they're huge and they are everywhere. 10 degrees outside, mosquitoes. Like it's the wild. Like there's trees, it's a forest, you know what I mean? And so like there's bugs and like animals here, right? And Penelope refused to wear bug spray because she's 5 and you're not going to tell her what to do, right? And she came home from camp with probably 17 million mosquito bites on her, and she was miserable. And the next day she wore bug spray.
Right.
And that was it. I didn't have to lecture her. Yeah. I did, like, her mom didn't have to explain to her the effects of, like, you know, allergic reactions when you get bit by a bug. Oh, she just saw it all firsthand. Like, if you don't listen to mom and dad about these things, like, clearly mom and dad knew. They were right.
Yeah.
They had the next day before we even left the door, you know. And so when we went up there, all of those things sort of started to become apparent. And they became apparent because we also weren't worried about, we got to go get you some new J's. You know, does dad have the coolest car on the block? You know, does everyone have mom's business card? Like those kind of things become irrelevant. Like, it's cool to be really successful financially or just like socially in Alaska. It's really cool. But do you know how to drive on the snow?
Right.
That's also way cool. In fact, it's more important here than anything else, right? Like, did you check your spare tire to see if you even had one? Like, it's sort of like, you know, the prototypical simple life. And what it did is it slowed Carla down. Like, you know, she was like, oh God, I do not know how far I want to like dive into this like 1980s movie working woman kind of life. Like, the kids are chill, my husband's chill, like he's standing on a scaffold with a sander, like stripping like the logs of our log home. There's food in the fridge. We got everything we need, you know, like, and so it like simplified and streamlined everything. And my thought was it would put things into perspective. Because I very much valued all of the time that I got to spend out in the sticks, you know, hitting trees with sticks and pretending I was slaying dragons or whatever, you know, I did as a kid, and like watching out for rattlesnakes and, you know, things like that. And I really valued that. And I wanted to give that to the girls. And Carla, God love her, man, she loves the shit out of me. And she was like, yeah, I mean, I'm from Dallas. I guess I'll move to Alaska. Sure.
Champion.
Why not?
Champion level wife.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Right. But, you know, she had buy-in on, my husband's not an idiot. I might be missing something, but I'm going to roll the dice on him. And it's all worked out famously. We've got a house. We've got a rental property, like it helps pay for the mortgage up there, and like I said, saving money is paying yourself,
Yeah.
And the kids get to see us investing in the family, right? Like when I'm up there working, like Carla frames it to the girls as like, daddy has to go to work, because I do. Like, right. I have to go like get materials and like sit in the sun for 7 hours and like do stuff, to like make sure the house is working. And it is work, and the kids see that, and it's been great for them. And everyone up there is like that. Like my neighbor, like redid his own roof. He's a contractor, the dude across the street from us, he works for like NOAA, but he's like a fisheries scientist, and his wife like can change her own tires on her car from like the summer tires to the winter tires, like they're just like rad people who can just sort of like handle what happens to them, and that also builds a community. Like we all were partying with the kids one night because it's an Alaskan summer. Sun doesn't go down till 1 a.m. or there's light until at least 1 a.m. So all the dads just impromptu at like 9:30, like all the wives were gone. And we all have daughters except for one boy on the block. That dude's going to know everything about women when he grows up, because there's like 7 or 8 girls and him. So he's going to have it all figured out. But we went to his dad's house at like 10 o'clock and they just like sprayed each other with a sprinkler, and we all like drank beer and sat by the fire, and and so it, she's totally in for that. Like
that's awesome.
So yeah, so she loves it, and it's been good for her, and it's been great for the kids. That's why they're who they are. They don't put up with anything from anybody, which I love. That's right now it's a pain because bedtime is a fight.
Right. Having strong-willed daughters, as you have 2 and I have 1, is both a blessing and a curse.
Right.
Yeah.
But no one's going to roll that little girl.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
When she's 35 and like some dude.
Yeah, nobody's going to walk all over her. No chance.
She's totally in control of her own destiny. So
I want to keep this around an hour for John's portion of the podcast on Front Row Dads, and then you and I will continue the conversation on the On the Edge podcast if anybody wants to tune in there. But just rapid fire, man. Best part and worst part of being a quote unquote stay-at-home dad.
Best part is like totally being there for everything that my kids do. The worst part is being surrounded by children 24 hours a day. Like they don't listen.
I can see you sometimes when you walk into jiu-jitsu by 4, you're like, Scott, how's it going, man? What'd you do today?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more. Did you see the Laker game?
Please.
What is going on?
God, I need an adult. Like my 9-year-old daughter does math at a 7th grade level, and she like didn't put socks on today when she left the house. She's been wearing shoes with no socks. I need help. I mean? Like someone save me. So, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world, man.
Yeah. And then just closing question for this, this is going to be coming out summer, September-ish of 2023. What are you most looking forward to for you and your family going into the end of 2023 and maybe even beyond?
Oh, man. Getting the kids back up to Alaska, putting them in school up there, and just like starting that whole thing over again. Skiing, ice fishing, all the cool stuff that very few people have access to.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on the Front Row Dad podcast. I want to talk to you more about knives and knife fighting and all the other cool stuff you do. So we'll continue the conversation. But thanks for being a guest on John Vroman's podcast. And John, thanks for letting me fill in for you.
Yeah.
Sweet. Now we can move on to the On the Edge podcast.
What an incredible fade out into a totally different
now we can talk about violence and drugs and sex and rock and roll.
Can you tell me where to stab someone quickly?
Yes.
And is it the perineum or the liver that does the most damage?
Yeah. So I don't know in knife fighting. Yeah. I don't know if there's belts or ranks or years of experience, but you can kill somebody very quickly with a knife. Can you explain to us why and how does this even come to be?
Yeah. So, so I started I did karate. started wrestling because I was like, I saw folk style wrestling, right? And I was like, this is obviously a martial art.
Right.
Like it's objectively a martial art, and it's an incredible one. I can learn it just like as an after school sport, like sign me up. Right. And then I got to college and I was kind of like dicking around. I was like, there's like a judo club and there's like a taekwondo club. And I was like, I like fighting. I like martial arts. I like being tested. I like knowing if I lose, it's because you're better than me. Like there's no one to blame.
Right.
But me. Oh, well, you're boxing and he's so much taller than you. Yeah, he is.
Right.
He still punched you in the face more than you punched him in the face. Like
right.
Lose, right? And I couldn't really find anything that like suited me. And then like, I don't know if you remember when like, this was like right after Iraq popped off, like all the movies became like The Bourne Identity and like Taken and, you know, stuff like that. And I was like, what is that? You know, and that was all like Filipino martial arts. A lot of it was based in Filipino martial arts. So I started looking into what Filipino martial arts were, and they're called, some of them, I was like, they're called Kali or they're called Eskrima. What is this about? Right. And I found a school in Austin, Texas that taught Filipino martial arts. And it wasn't like a Krav Maga school where they also taught it. Like it was like a Filipino martial arts school. I was like, cool, I'll go check it out. Surprisingly, one of, if not the best instructor in this branch of Filipino martial arts called Pakiti Tersha Kali. Excuse me.
Is Kali like the knife or the name of the family?
Yeah, yeah. You can think of Kali as like the family name.
Okay.
Like you would say karate.
Yeah.
And maybe there's like Shotokan and Kempo, right?
Got it. So like in jiu-jitsu, this would be like the Gracie Barra family.
Something like
Kali,
that.
okay.
Yeah, that's right. So this guy teaches Pakiti Tersha Kali, and I have no idea what that means. And he's also a guru in an Indonesian martial art called Silat. And I have no idea what that means, but it looks dope, you know? And I was like, oh, let me go see if this guy's legit. And turns out he's like the foremost instructor on the planet outside of like the Philippines. Like he's a grandmaster. And he was like 33 at the time. And his name is Leslie. And he had spent he graduated from UT, and then he just like worked as a waiter and would like save a bunch of money and then like travel to the Philippines and like live there for like 3 months with like the linear grandmaster of the system, train like 10 hours a day, then fly home, make a bunch more money. And then he would like fly to Indonesia. Like he like lived with cannibals like an Indonesian island. And he's this like white bread like guy, right? And I was named Leslie, right? With like sort of questionably short khaki shorts when I met him. And I was like, this guy's like super preppy. I was like, but he's also like Indiana Jones, right?
Right.
This dude's awesome. He's like super well behaved. He's from Georgia, so he's got like excellent manners and his like shirt's tucked in, you know. And I was like, wow, like look at this guy. And I started training with him. And if you've ever done martial arts, like for any period of time, you know what a master looks like, right? Like if you've only done jiu-jitsu, but you went to a karate class and your partner was Lyoto Machida, you would know immediately, like, this is obviously someone who's the best at the best. Like, right. You can just see the movements and the fluidity and the mastery. But he was also this excellent instructor, and I was like, I'm hooked. I'm in. So started training like every day he offered classes, and I actually coached CrossFit at his martial arts academy.
Oh, wow.
Dear friend, love him to death.
So explain Kali. It's like it's with a knife, right? Or with sticks?
So the way that, and I won't speak for other systems because, like with all martial arts, there's so much internecine conflict. But the way that we do it is, there's some things to understand. The first thing is like, the rattan stick is absolutely a stick that you can use to hit someone in the head with, right? Like it's definitely a weapon.
It's like a billy club, right?
It's a piece of like rattan, and it's about the length of your arm plus or minus, right?
Okay.
But real quickly you realize like, oh, if I can do like these 2 strikes with this stick, I can do them with a T-ball bat. I can also do them with a machete, a pipe, or a knife. Like if I have a knife kind of like in stabbing grip, you can slash with it. Or if it's in sort of like an ice pick grip, those same strikes that you learn to like strike with a stick, those are the mechanics that you need to use any other weapon, essentially. So the way Kali works is, everything you do everything you train in should have the most effect possible, right? Like if you're a 14-year-old boy and we've got to go to war tomorrow, what I teach you right now should work with a weapon. And if it doesn't work with a weapon, we're not going to teach it because it's going to get you killed, right? So I loved the mentality of like efficiency. Like there's no artifice to the system. And also like if you're training with someone and you're sparring and like they hit you in the hand, even with the rattan stick, oh, it hurts. You lost. It's over. Because if that were a machete, I just cut off 4 of your fingers.
Yeah.
Like that's the end. There's no like kind of covering up and eating punches in a knife fight. Right.
Right.
Like it's either the Leslie used to say, and I don't know if this is him that said it, but there's no ties in a knife fight. Like there's no, oh, he punched me more than I punched him, so he won this round. One or both of you is dead, right? So if you're not perfectly accurate, it's like fencing. If you're not perfectly accurate, you lost.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no
draw in fencing.
There's no draw in fencing. That's exactly right. You won, you hit him, and he hit you. You both died. Full stop. Right? So I was immediately attracted to that. And fortunately for me, I ended up just kind of stumbling upon someone who is now like one of, if not the, like I said, foremost instructors in the system. The man's incredible. Like and I was able to learn from him I think I trained under him for 7 years. In fact, the project that I'm working on with Chris back there, it's with him.
Oh, awesome.
Like, so he'll be coming up to Alaska in a couple weeks, and we're going to kind of block out the whole project and all the filming for the instruction, and then we're going to film it all. So like, yeah, he's been a friend of mine for, 15, 16 years. And, unlike a lot of martial arts where you don't spar and you don't really like understand if it works or not, like very quickly, like it baked into the drills is sparring. If it doesn't work, you just got hit in the face with the stick.
Yeah.
You were wrong because that shouldn't have happened. Right? Like, and we keep going through the patterns and the flows and develop the mechanics and the muscle memory. And what I liked about Kali Pikiti Tertia specifically is Pikiti Tertia starts at very close range, like where I can like touch you on the shoulder. That's usually, especially if a weapon like a bat or something is involved, crossing that like long range middle to close range. Like if you're a grappler and someone has an axe, you can win, but you got to get to them because you got an axe, right? Well, the way Kali Pikiti Tertia starts is in close. Like you got to be on them. You got to like get rid of your natural instinct to like wait, kind of fence,
Yeah.
in and out.
Let me see if he throws a punch.
Let me see. Yeah. Like, where am I? No, you've got to commit.
Right.
And it also works on the assumption of like,
you don't want to strike second if somebody's trying to strike you with a knife.
That's exactly right. And you don't want to be afraid to cross to them, right? You don't want to be afraid to engage, which is pretty natural. Like, you're like, does that guy have a knife?
Right.
Like, I don't want to. So all of the initial drills and patterns and techniques is not the right way to put it, but like all of the initial training is really close. Like, I should be able to hit you with my bare hand. That's how close we are. So if it's a knife, you're immediately engaged, right? I should be able to do this in a phone booth, right? Like, I should be able to get attacked in a shower and be just fine. Everything outside of that gets sort of like exponentially easier to deal with, right? If you have that kind of knowledge of, in the worst situation, I can handle myself and disengage or engage. In the easiest situation, this is,
There's that old joke of like run from a knife and charge a gun.
That's exactly right.
They can shoot you running away, but a knife, you don't want to be close.
That's exactly right. And so the way Pakiti Tertia works is that's exactly right. Like, you don't want to be close,
right? But
you might be. The worst case scenario is being close to a guy with a knife.
Yeah.
So you should learn to deal with that first.
Yeah.
Like, that is worst case scenario, and that is not something that you should wait on till later.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you should learn the dynamics of it. Because the other thing that I kind of realized is, we both do jiu-jitsu. When you pull out a weapon, it also becomes about like tool mastery, like understanding the physics and the mechanics and the angles and what can happen.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a hand saw or you have a miter saw, those are very different tools. They do the same thing, but you got to understand what they do, right? And you got to learn what a knife does and what a bat does and a machete. Like, like if you're a 3-time Golden Gloves boxer and someone pulls a machete on you and you cover up, like, you're losing your arm or whatever.
You're dead.
You're taking extreme damage because your instincts aren't quite lined up for that situation. Now, you might have a good chance. You definitely have a better chance than the average person. And if you're especially skilled boxer, you're probably faster and you have better reaction times. But man, if you don't know how a knife works and you do something like, I'm a wrestler, so I'm going to grab their hand, and the person who has the knife just rolls his wrist and you're holding his wrist, and he slashes the inside and the outside of your hand by just, even if he doesn't know what he's doing, like, it's a knife, like, it's going to shred you if you touch it. Right. Like, it's such a
It gives me like chills even just thinking about knife fighting.
Such a dangerous tool. And like, we used to do like little demos and stuff. Like, you remember the old like X block, and like, if someone stabs at you, you can kind of hear. And like, the minute you do that and your arms are crossed and I pull my arm back, I'm taking like the inside of one of your wrists.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if you grab my hand and I yank my hand back, I'm taking your thumb home with me. Like, if you're really interested in it as an art, like, what can be done with this tool, right? Because that's what art is. It's not just using a tool. It's what can you do with that tool, right? Like, knives are scary as shit, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that is not something to mess with. Like,
yeah.
And so I was instantly hooked. I was like, this is like old school, like, European traveling swords masters, like, that kind of know the secrets of something, right? I was immediately hooked. And then I immediately realized how vulnerable, you can be. Like, a absolute dope with an ice pick is eminently dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to run.
Right.
Because I know what that thing can do.
Yeah.
Like, I know what that can do in the hands of an untrained person. I'm not getting anywhere near that if I can avoid it.
Right.
But if I have to, I know something. I understand the mechanics of it and where it's going to go and where it is in space. And so So yeah, I fell for it immediately.
It's amazing.
Immediately. So we're going to train when I come back down in September,
100%,
right?
man. 100%.
Awesome.
Because I'm just curious. Like, I want to know what I'm just curious to know like what it looks like and what the mechanics are.
Yeah.
Like, thank God I've not had a knife pulled on me, and hopefully I never have to pull a knife on anybody. Yeah. But just knowing what it can do.
That's right.
And you hear these crazy things of like, oh yeah, this guy unloaded a whole magazine and missed all of his targets with a gun because he was so nervous.
Yeah.
But with a knife, it's like an extension of your hand. No matter how nervous you are, you can still manipulate your hand. I would guess
precisely correct.
Okay, yeah, I would guess a novice with a knife infinitely more dangerous than a novice with a gun.
Well, and you think about it, right? Like, and I'm going to mess up the geometry of this, right? But if you're 10 meters away from me and I have to shoot you with a 9mm and I'm 2 centimeters off,
you miss.
I miss, right? Like if I have the slightest variation here out over 10 meters, I miss.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever been hunting will tell you, like, God, at 100 yards, if you were off one tick, you might as well have not even shown up today. It's over, right?
Right.
Man, with a knife, you can cover your eyes and just kind of flail wildly, and someone's getting shredded if they're in like the arc of those weapons. And I think the other thing too is like, if you've never been cut with a knife or with anything, right? Like, you don't actually have a concept of what like what is like a melee weapon can do. A machete, an axe, a knife, an ice pick, something as simple as an ice pick that you could buy at the store for $7.
Yeah.
It can chip ice.
Right.
Ice is hard, bro. Like, what is that going to do to your neck if it hits you?
God, it's giving me the chills you were talking about.
Exactly. Like, it's crazy. It's like, when you think about it, it's like, that's insane. And also, there was something too about it that I really dug. Like, I mean, essentially, the first thing that humans invented was sharp and pointy.
Right.
And then we put it on like something that was long and sharp and pointy, right? Like,
right.
But the basic,
and then something that would fly that was sharp and pointy.
Right. Like, but the basic design hasn't changed because it didn't need to.
Right.
Like,
right.
See, if I'm scared, panicked, freaking out, but I can flail wildly with a really sharp object, I've taken care of 85% of the problems that can show up at my doorstep.
Totally.
Right? Like, seriously. And, you're from, LA, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's like anyone who's ever lived in a big city, dude, people get stabbed.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. Like, it's such a simple thing that can wreak so much devastation on a person. And if you don't know what you're doing, if you need to train jiu-jitsu to learn how to grapple, if you didn't have access to wrestling in high school or college, like, it's sort of uniform, like, folk knowledge. You got to learn to grapple, right? Because most fights go to the ground. You don't want them to go to the ground, but they'll probably go to the ground.
Every bar fight you ever see.
Every bar fight goes to the ground, and hopefully no one gets stomped, right? But also, most fights don't end in weapons coming out, but the ones that do always end up with someone dead. Yeah. Like, if you're really actually like concerned with sort of like full spectrum protection, you need to learn how to use jiu-jitsu. You need to learn how to shoot a gun, and you should probably take some weapons training, like, and legitimately deal with it, even if psychologically, to just understand, like, oh my God, I am so vulnerable. Like, here I am, like, doing bench press all the time and like rear naked choking people. And if someone throws a knife into the mat,
it's totally different.
It's totally different. Like, nothing that I know matters anymore. So it blew my mind. Like, I was like, oh God,
yeah,
I had No clue.
I wish I had not seen this. So if you don't want to hear something horrible and you're listening to the podcast right now, go ahead and just fast forward about a minute and a half. I saw this horrible video somebody sent me on Instagram. These two guys got into a fight in a parking lot, and you just popped this bad boy down. Sorry, there you go.
Nice.
They got in a fight in this parking lot, and the one guy was super cocky because he was jiu-jitsu wrestling guy. Threw the guy to the ground, had him in an arm bar, and didn't break his arm and completely demobilize him. He was just sitting there basically talking shit to the guy like, yeah, what do you got now? Because he's got his arm in a position where he could break it. The dude with his free arm reached into his belt, grabbed a knife, rolled over, stabbed the guy in the gut about 10 times before the dude even knew it hit him. He had to have died. I'm pretty sure I watched a video of a man dying.
Yep.
And it was, first of all, horrendous to watch.
Yeah, horrifying, right?
Second of all, reminded me, like, doesn't matter how fucking badass you are, even if you're snapping a guy's arm, the other arm, if he can get to a knife, you're done.
You have a problem.
And then it reminded me, like, dude, snap the guy's arm and run the hell away. Like, if you get into a situation where somebody's trying to harm you, being, like you said, getting stomped in the head's a real thing. So being down on the ground, probably not a good plan, just in case the guy's buddies show up and stomp you in the head.
Concrete,
Snap the dude's arm and get the hell out of there. It was like, I watched that video and I was like, oh, I got to call Patrick and learn more about knives. At least how to identify if somebody has one or whatnot.
That's right. And that's kind of the, I've seen a couple videos like that, and it's a nightmare to watch because the first thing that happens is the dude who, like in this case, who's holding the arm bar is 100% certain that he's won.
Yeah.
Within like the confines of his like worldview, his knowledge. I've reached endgame. I can dislocate your elbow. But this person showed up not playing by those rules.
Right.
He decided I'd rather not get my arm broken on the streets, and he has no compunction about stabbing you 10 times with a knife. Man, you got a problem. Like, right? Like if you're not playing, and that was the thing, that I noticed real quickly is like, it's not boxing anymore if someone pulls out a brick.
Right.
Right? Like it's not like, I love boxing. It's like top 3 favorite sports.
Yeah.
But if you're arguing with someone and his friend hits you in the back of the head with a baseball bat, it's different.
Right.
Right.
You can be Floyd Mayweather or Mike Tyson. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe Mike Tyson. I think that guy.
I think Mike Tyson.
I think that guy has a skull like an orangutan or something.
To the head. Yeah.
That guy's crazy, man. Anyway, funny story. I was at the Wynn one night, super late playing poker, and Mike Tyson walks in.
This is already a Vegas story.
And he's got the 2 biggest fucking scariest bodyguards I've ever. Like these dudes made Suge Knight look small.
Right, exactly.
And I go to the dealer and I'm like, whoa, first of all.
Right. Yeah.
Second of all, I'm like, why the fuck does Mike Tyson need bodyguards? He's like, no, man, he comes in here all the time. You don't understand. Those bodyguards aren't there to protect Mike Tyson from you. They're there to protect you from Mike Tyson. Because people would walk up to him and just start talking shit and thinking they were going to fight Mike because, they're drunk and they just lost $100,000 gambling or whatever. And he's like, dude, oh, yeah, Mike's pretty much beat 3 guys at the Wynn to within an inch of their life because they thought they were going to be tough. So now he can only come in here with bodyguards to protect our clientele from Mike. And I was like, wow, that's wild. But even him, if you have a bat or a knife or a gun, doesn't matter.
And that's kind of the scary thing. Right. And that's sort of the Achilles heel of sport martial arts, right? Wrestling, Muay Thai, boxing, BJJ, especially BJJ. I think, BJJ creates such good BJJ fighters so quickly.
Whoa, that was a giant bug.
There it is. It's a grasshopper. It creates such good fighters so quickly because you can essentially go to 99% of, I'm going to cripple you. And then the person can just give up, high five, keep rolling. Right. So you can train with the utmost intensity.
Yeah. You've been about a centimeter away from snapping my ankle off.
Right.
And then I just get to tap and we get to start over again. Where if that was a real fight, I would not be walking normal for the rest of my life.
Your wife would be helping you out of the bathtub, right?
Yeah.
But it's always sort of like confined, right? Like boxing, you can't hit below the belt, whatever the rules are that people point at, right? But it's a sport at some point.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't have in your head that not everyone's playing a game, you're going to be a guy who arm bars a dude on the street and gets stabbed like 10 times in the stomach, or gets his head kicked in by your friend, this dude's friends, or whatever it is. Like, and that had occurred to me. I was like, I don't know anything about like knives. And then I was like, oh God, everyone has a knife.
Right.
There's knives everywhere. There's not, like, if I break this glass, I've got like 3 knives, you know?
Right.
Oh God, you know? And so I was like, I need to figure this out like real quick if I want to like not be so freaked out every time I see like a contractor with like a carpet cutting knife on his belt or whatever, you know? And the other thing too is like, I think most people that really study martial arts, like the first thing you understand is how vulnerable you are.
Oh yeah.
Like it doesn't matter how good you are. Like you're vulnerable.
Have you ever been knocked out?
Mm-hmm.
So I was boxing with Eddie Sanchez, and Eddie Sanchez used to be my boxing instructor. Great dude. I don't know, like 6'1", 130 pounds, or one of these crazy super lightweights, you know?
Right.
He probably walked around at like 150 and then would cut down to like 135.
Right.
And we were boxing, and he was this guy who was like a journeyman, and then he's at Pachanga Casino, and he's like eating nachos. And the dude who was supposed to fight for the title that night gets out of the limo, slips, falls, and breaks his elbow. So they go up to Eddie and they're like, hey, can you make weight in 5 hours? And he's like, he gets on the scale. He's like, I guess I could drop 12 pounds in 5 hours. So he does. He fights for the belt that night and ends up winning like a WBC, whatever it is, flyweight or something. No, I'm good. So he was the champ, and then, proceeds to get his ass beat in the next fight, because now there's expectations.
Right.
Anyway, a phenomenal boxer. And crazy story, he's driving home from a boxing match with a prospect, a kid who's under 18, who he was like very fatherly to. They get into a fender bender with some meth head, and the meth head comes charging for the car. He gets out. He's like, Scott, I punched this dude in the face harder than I've ever punched somebody in my entire life. He went down. He got back up like a fucking vampire because he was so methed out of his mind. His face was split open like the Predator.
Sure.
Like I could see his chin bone all the way up to the cartilage on his nose, and he stabbed me in the chest, collapsed one of my lungs, and so Eddie never fought again because he only had one lung. They punctured his lung. They had to remove it. They had to remove like 3/4 of his lung. So his cardio was shit because he had like one lung.
He's on 50% capacity automatically.
Yeah, but he was a great instructor. So we're going at it, and we're sparring one day, and he's like, hey, man, calm the fuck down. Like, you don't really know what you're doing, but you throw a really hard punch. So like we're sparring, we're like, we're throwing some water here, but calm the fuck down. And I was like, wow, I'm fucking badass.
I'm sparring with Eddie Sanchez.
Yeah, exactly. This guy's like just pivots to the side. And to this day, I don't know if it was my kidney or my liver. He hit me so fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like my brain was still alive, but my body was dead.
It's weird, right?
It's so weird. It's like just turning off the lights on your body. And I fell to the ground, and I'm like twitching like a dead fish. And like you're totally aware. Yeah. So you're like, I need to get up. He's going to punch me in the face. He could kick me in the face. Luckily, we were friends. He just walked off the ring. He goes, you'll be fine in 90 seconds. Yeah. And I'm on the ground like fucking twitching like an invalid. And I can't move my body. It's like, it's an off switch. And I remember thinking about it after that, like, oh, I'm never going to get into a street fight. Because if somebody landed that punch in a street fight and then stomped my head, I'd be dead. And so when all these guys at the gym sometimes they're like, yeah, well, what I would do in a fight, I'm like, what I would do is try to de-escalate it, buy the guy a beer.
Yeah. Right.
And then run away.
Listen.
And if he's still coming at me, I'm going to grab my gun.
Yeah. And first of all, like just full disclosure, I used to be possessed of that, like, I will fight.
You had that little man syndrome, didn't you?
No, I had I don't know if you would call it little man syndrome, but that's fine. Yeah. But it was more just like, I wouldn't talk to you that way.
Right.
So you must think I'm garbage, and I don't appreciate that. And
Such a Texas thing.
that's exactly what it is. It's that old school, like, sometimes you got to stand for something,
Right.
and it did not always serve me well in life.
Right.
Like, sometimes you got to draw a line and stand up, and it's like, oh God, I'm in jail,
It's the worst.
Oh, he died? Oh God.
Right.
But you get a situation like that where you think about like the story that you just told. An aging boxing instructor accurately touched you in the face.
Yeah, I do with one lung.
Yeah. And he shut off your entire nervous system. That's dim mak. That's like old school, like mystical death touch, right?
Right.
And an incompetent dope on drugs nearly killed him.
With a knife.
What the like, that's crazy when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
So rule number 1, please don't get in a fight. Like, this is crazy. Like, it is so easy to get brutalized out there. But also, listen, you got to know what's out there. Like, and I've always enjoyed training. It's a good workout. It exercises the demons, whatever, right? Like, it's good for you. It's good to be put in your place. I'm 41 years old with a head of hair for days and a mustache that, like, a 1980s action star would kill for, right? So I'm pretty full of myself, right? And a beautiful wife. Like, I'm killing it, right? And then like some 26-year-old who lives off of like rice and chicken breast on a George Foreman grill chokes me out 17 times in like 4 minutes, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should go back to my kids. It's good to be humbled, and it's good to humble yourself. But man, you start talking about like what can happen, like the realities of like why you're learning the stuff that you're learning. When you say something like, oh, I need to learn this to protect my family. Okay, bro. What's really good for protecting your family? Not going to bars at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Right.
Locking your doors at night, like those de-escalating situations, because you don't want to get in a fight. That's crazy. First of all, what are you, 40?
44, yeah.
Yeah, what are you? Like, if you get in a fist fight after high school, like, you made a mistake today.
Right.
At some point, I don't know what the point was, but you are in the wrong as well, right? So avoid fights at all costs, right? But also really understand the main reason to avoid fights is if someone pulls out a knife, you're dead. You can be a championship boxer and get your lung collapsed by an idiot.
By a deranged meth head.
That's exactly right. Like, wrong place, wrong time, career gone. Like, what? Like, and that's not an uncommon story. And, we would do, when I started training Kali, and this is what kind of like blew my mind, is like, this is kind of getting esoteric, but there's something called a we tick, and it just kind of means like a tick. Like, so
we tick?
We tick, yeah. So like if you have your weapon, you kind of like flick your wrist forward and pull it back. And you can like pop someone on the side of the head and then slash them with your weapon and kind of maybe use it as a fake or a bait or an actual strike. But if you have a knife, right? Like, I have a knife in my hand and I flick my wrist out and I hit you in the meat of your arm, I'm going to take out a triangle-shaped divot this big,
right,
like,
and my arm no longer works.
Your arm no longer works. Oh, God, it's that easy? Yeah. That's the oldest tool in the book, man. And I just hit you with it. Like, and it's just a game of tag, right? Flick, hit you in the eye with it. Or I just flick it out and it hits something. Like, and I'm taking home like divots, like it's a polo match. Like, this is crazy when you think about what this thing is. you got to learn all you can about it.
You know, all I'm thinking of right now is Monty Python, The Search for the Holy Grail, where he cuts off his arm. It's just a flesh wound. It's just a scratch.
Yeah,
It's like, no, I've bested you. Your arm is gone.
Exactly. And you're like, oh, it doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work. Oh, okay. You win.
No,
you win. Please don't hit me again.
Please stop stabbing me. Oh, no, I can't defend. And I got knocked out. Oh, no. And so, you know, I immediately fell for Kali. I immediately fell for the idea also of like efficiency. Like if it doesn't work with a knife, if it doesn't work with a machete, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It just doesn't. Because that's the end game.
Right.
Right. That's the worst case scenario. And if it doesn't work in that scenario, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not going to cover up and play like, you know, like pretend I'm the next Mike Tyson and peekaboo when a dude's got, you know, a razor blade in his hand. Like
right.
I'm losing blood every minute. Right. And so, you know, and it's not a comfortable feeling to know that either. Right. To know like, oh, if like a 9-year-old pokes you in the neck with something sharp, it's all over.
Yeah.
Oh God. Like, yeah. What a nightmare to right. like, I'm a black belt in judo or whatever you are. Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
right.
And you know, even, I think it was, who was it? Who's the guy that trains, Gordon Ryan,
Danaher. Yeah.
He even said something about like, you know, jiu-jitsu, like, what did he say? Like jiu-jitsu gives you, like, it's like wrestling or boxing. It gives you power over one person. Like if they don't have it, you can beat them unless they have a knife.
Right.
Right. Like, and it's just, now we're doing something different. They might as well have a flamethrower.
Yeah.
Like if they're
right.
close enough to hit you with that knife, you got to know an entirely new skill set. And that was super terrifying to me when I saw that. I was like, oh God. The first time I trained with Leslie, we were doing some, like, we call it knife tapping. They're just like, they're sensitivity drills, like, you know, kind of learning where it's sort of like hand fighting and wrestling, like, you know, learning how to clear hands and, you know, pull the head and pummel and keep your balance and know where your opponent is by feel. It's not a move. Like you see people do knife tapping a lot to like on YouTube, and it's like, that's not a move. That's just a drill for training physical attributes. But I was knife tapping with Leslie and I didn't know what I was doing. Right. So he's walking me through it and we're training, and he, you know, one of the things that we'll do is like, if someone has a weapon and you clear it, you'll kind of like slap their hand down or their forearm down. I'm not trying to hold it for too long. I just need to clear it so I can get my weapon free, right? And get those little like interrupts, like a jab, right? Like kind of check the energy check the momentum of the fight. And Leslie slapped me right here to hold my arm down. And I dropped my weapon because it hurt. And my whole arm like immediately turned purple where he slapped me, and in like the shape of a hand, and like this vein just like essentially burst. Like he slapped and he's like 165 pounds at the time, and he was not trying to hurt me.
Right.
It's like when you got knocked out, like he was not trying to hurt me. His just like,
oh, I think maybe he was trying to hurt me. No,
yeah, he might have been. And Leslie might have been trying to prove a point because I was just like young, like arrogant.
How hard can this be?
Oh, man, he hit me so hard. I was like, I can't feel my whole arm. It was like, dude, did you break my arm? Like, what right. What just happened here, man? And he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was like, you're not sorry. You know precisely what you did.
And what's crazy, that was a slap. Imagine it was a knife.
That's right. I was like, don't apologize. Like, I need to, how long have you been practicing that? Right. But it was just, you know, and what if that was a knife, right? I was like, oh, my arm wasn't working now. If he had a real knife and not a training knife, I was dead. That's very humbling to like realize. And when you get like popped in the forehead with like a rattan stick in training, and you're like, oh God, that hurt. When you realize that represents like a ginunting, like a Filipino sword or a talibong or something, another type of sword. They have a lot of different swords in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Like when you realize like, oh, that little like clink, like that would have like gone 2 inches into my head.
Yeah, you're dead.
I'm dead. Like, oh no, or I lost my eye. Oh no.
Right.
You know, like the stakes are like immediately higher.
Yeah.
When you have that knowledge, right?
Have I heard this right? I think I've heard this story. I don't know if this is urban legend or somebody made it up on a podcast, but is it true that the Brits like took away all the steel and the guns and whatnot when they colonized the Philippines, and so that's why they learned how to fight with sticks and why they're so freaking good?
I think it was supposed to be the Spanish.
Okay.
I'm going to be in a lot of trouble for as much as I've trained. I'm going to say it was the Spanish because I feel better about saying that.
Okay, cool.
Because like the Philippines was named for like King Philip of Spain.
Oh, okay. So
like,
it was the Spaniards.
Yeah, it was
took away their steel.
Yeah,
wouldn't let them have guns.
Yeah, that was like so they took away like their like blades essentially. Yeah. And everyone just started training with sticks using the exact same motions.
Yeah.
They're the same motions. You know, if you can do it with a stick, you can do it with a sword, right?
Right.
And then I also learned how to fight with a stick. And it's not just rattan. Like rattan is for light training. Like there's like I think you can't use guava anymore because it's like an endangered tree, but there's like some hardwoods in the Philippines that are essentially like maces, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's an aluminum bat.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, 100%, right? So, or you hit someone in the wrist with it and their arm is broken, you know, so, and they'll like shape it to where it's kind of got like a boat oar kind of shape. So it's got like an edge and it'll like crack your hand open and stuff like that. So it's all the same thing. But if you learn the mechanics of it, you've just learned the mechanics of it. Like swinging a bat to hit someone in the head is no different than swinging a hatchet.
Yeah.
Or a knife.
I remember hearing about Filipino sports or Filipino martial arts when like UFC came out in the 90s. We were talking, and some guy's dad had been in like, I don't know, served in the Marines or something over the Philippines. He's like, no, you guys don't know what real fights are. The Philippines had like the last sanctioned bare knuckle fight to the death in like 1983. And so until like until like 1983, sanctioned fights to the death were still allowed in the Philippines. These guys were not fucking around.
That's not surprising.
And he's like, yeah, whatever, UFC, that's cool. They have rounds, and this guy's wearing a boxing glove, and this guy's wearing a robe. He didn't know what a gi was. He's like, you should hang out with the Filipinos. These dudes can fight, man. They had their last sanctioned fight to the death in like 83.
Yeah.
And that stuck in my mind. So sure enough, like 20 years later, Wikipedia comes out. I look it up. Sure enough, true statement.
For real?
Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
It's not surprising. And I think, you know, like people will call it like warrior spirit or something like that. But what are we essentially talking about? Like commitment to what we're doing.
Right.
Right. Like if I know that this is going to be like a weapons duel or something like that, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to step in that ring, like we're not playing. Right. And you know, there's a movie, it's kind of a documentary. I don't know if I would call it cheesy, but it's definitely like clearly one-sided. But I enjoyed it. It's called I think it's called like Kali means to scrape, which is apparently one of the dialects. Like that's what it means. And like the first thing they do is like they just start showing all these dudes in the Philippines, and like dude like lifts his shirt up and he's got like a slash from here, like a scar from here to here, and like dudes are all cut up, and you know, and like they tried to sort of like in the movie or the documentary, they were like really propagandizing like the badass warrior culture of like the Philippines and maybe like over exaggerating it, but yeah. Like they're not messing around. Yeah. Like if you like, I think the term he used was like blade culture. Like they understand if we're fighting, knives are going to come out.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't fight.
Have you been to the Philippines?
I have never been to the Philippines.
I kind of want to go.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go to the Philippines to go diving. I want to go to Truk Lagoon, which is over, I think it's part of Indonesia or Micronesia. I can't remember. There's like a lot of places in Asia I want to go, except for China. And for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, I'd love to go and just see. We had a buddy of mine, G. Russell, on, who was a lifelong martial artist into fighting.
Sure.
I actually just posted this clip today, and he went to, he told this great story. He went to Thailand to train Muay Thai, and they would, if you wanted to train with the real Muay Thai fighters,
right,
you had to do a 5-mile run in the morning before breakfast, and then you had to do your warm-ups. Then you had to do your first workout before you like earned breakfast. Like if you want, you know, you could go be a tourist and just go to a class.
Sure.
But if you wanted to fight with the fighters, this was like the table stakes.
Right.
So he goes, then he gets into like the round with this dude who's like half his size. He's like, this guy looked like a kid. He was about 120 pounds.
Right.
And we're kind of starting to go at it. And so I'm like, fuck it. He's like, I saw my opening. He's like, you know, left hook or no, right jab, left hook, left elbow, and right like roundhouse kick. And he's like, Scott, I connected on all 4 of those. And he's a big dude.
Yeah,
he's like, I guarantee you, anybody in America, it knocks them out. And this kid backed up, he's like, wow, good warm up.
Yeah.
And he was like, he's like, oh, I'm fucked. Throw in the towel. I'm done. I'm going to go fight with the tourists. Like, this guy is going to kill me.
Like, because and here's the thing is like, that's not bravado.
Yeah. No, that's that guy's life.
Actually, but it didn't hurt.
Right.
Right. He's so, especially in a place like, well, like Thailand, and I'm not like an expert, but you know, a lot of these Thai fighters, man, you know, they start fighting at like 8, like competitively, like kids like elbowing each other and knocking each other out and like brutal, like knees to the jaw. And like, you get that kid when he's 19, hey, bro,
good luck.
You're not winning.
Yeah.
Like not on his terms, right?
Right.
But it's also like for them, as I understand, like it's culturally very important to them. Like it's a way out. Maybe your dad and your granddad fought and you spent your whole life essentially living as a monk, right? Like a Muay Thai monk, just like eating like beetle nut or whatever it is. Like they have like a whatever they dip there and just like fighting all day. Yeah. Like you're not winning, bro. Like you're not winning. And this is not like a Shaolin monastery where like, you know, Shaolin was like the best technology of the time in like 100 AD, right? Like we're well past that. Like this is still today an ultra efficient martial art, right?
Right.
You're not beating that guy.
Right.
Like, and if look, man, I'm well past my fighting in the street days, but if I unloaded with my best combo that I like love and I set it up and I get it all off, whatever it is, and the guy goes, huh, bro, like here are my keys, you know.
Yeah, I'm all done for the day.
My wife's name is Carla. She's a Taurus, so be careful. You know, I just have a nice day, man. Like I'm not, you win whatever you want. I can't stop you. And so like, but I think in the Philippines, because I had the good fortune a couple of times to train with my instructor's instructor. And a couple of other very good, like from the Philippines, instructors, and it's always shocking to me how like nice anyone can be. You know, like I mean, where we train jiu-jitsu, like Cowboy Cerrone will come in.
Yeah, nice guy ever.
Like high five, you know, mostly because he knows he can murder everyone in the room, probably 3 at a time, right? Like he's not concerned, but he's also probably just nice. But he means it when he's fighting, right?
Right.
These guys all mean it, but they're not boxing.
Right.
Like the stakes are higher. Like you make one mistake, your positioning is off. And that's what I really loved about Kali, because it is like fencing in that way. Your positioning is off.
You die.
That's it. That's like when you're fencing, right? Boop. Like, what does that mean? That means he just stabbed you through your heart.
Yeah, done.
Jesus. Like
Jesus.
Like, oh God. Like he didn't just like touch me with a stick. Like I'm dead. That's what oh God, I am dead. Like what if that was a sword? Oh no. So, you know, and you know, but what's fun about Kali is when you have those stakes, it makes the training more important. Right? Like you understand, like, I'm not just going to the range with my buddies to like, you know, spend 70 cents a trigger pull on some 9mm or whatever, like whatever it costs right now.
Right.
Like this is serious.
Yeah.
And so even if you're having fun talking to your buddies, you know, you all get close. We're doing like something serious here. Like it matters, right? And everyone who's there, it's like in jiu-jitsu. Everyone is there for a different reason, but they understand the value like of what they're doing. It just so happens that in Kali, the value is like different.
Right.
And it's a worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait to train, dude.
I'm looking forward to it, man. Last question, because I always like to end this way. You got to get out of here. I got to go to 6 a.m. jiu-jitsu. Favorite movie and why? We already talked about what you're looking forward to, getting back up to Alaska, hanging with the daughters, doing some ice fishing this winter. But what's your favorite movie and why?
Man, that's a tough question because I really like movies.
So do I.
I love movies. If I can say generally, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Mm-hmm. But if I can,
I always forget you're a Dungeons and Dragons nerd.
Yeah, I'm a nerd, right? But I think specifically like Return of the King.
Phenomenal movie.
Yeah, but why? Like, and this goes to like the podcast, right? Like, Aragorn is like what a dude is supposed to be like. He's a very brave warrior. He's an excellent leader. He's like calm. He's compassionate. He cares for people. You know, he's not quick to anger. Like the characters are all written so well. And because I was a Lord of the Rings nerd, you know, they really got like all the characters.
Yeah, they nailed it.
They nailed that movie.
Fucked up The Hobbit.
Look, man.
The Hobbit to me just doesn't even exist.
Start with me. And then that Rings of Power nonsense.
Oh, garbage. Complete garbage. God,
I got through like half of an episode and I was like, I don't understand. Like, what is, like, are they making like Galadriel like Jack Bauer? Like, what are we doing with this? Like,
it's real bad.
I couldn't finish it. So I don't know. Like, I know it got kind of like roasted.
Yeah, I got to the middle of episode 2 or 3 and I'm like, this is so garbage. Right? I can't even invest the rest of my time in this.
That's so sad.
Yeah.
You know, but like I think they like when you want to talk about like what a dude is supposed to be like.
Yeah. Aragorn.
Like, it's Aragorn, man. And the casting was great. The costumes were great.
Yeah.
The dialogue was understand because like if you've read the Lord of the Rings books, they are difficult.
Yeah, they're very academic. It's like reading Old English or something.
Well, it's because it was written by like a professor of philology. Like the dude, like basically just like, I guess I can invent a whole new language for this race. And
right.
You're like, oh God, like, okay, nerd. Like I thought I was a dork. You made up all this stuff. Oh Lord. But yeah, just what a great movie. And then I don't know, close second, maybe Chinatown.
You know, I've never seen Chinatown.
Dude. Don't even say that to
Never
me,
seen
bro.
Chinatown. And I'll be honest, I know it's like in the IMDb top 100. I don't even know what Chinatown's about.
Man, shut
For real, I don't. Like, and I'm like a movie buff, but for some reason that's not on. That's never been on my radar.
Dude, dig in, man.
What's it about?
I'm not even gonna tell you.
Okay,
dude. I'm not gonna tell you. You're gonna love it though.
All right.
Like it, if you, you know what?
It's better Roger Rabbit.
It's I don't know. Is it like film? I've got a buddy who is an.
Is it like film noir?
I guess that would be the way to put it. I'm not like a buff on like all of the genres.
Right.
Also, if you haven't seen Unforgiven, guys, everybody should see Unforgiven.
Yeah.
Especially because like the main character who's supposed to be like the most legendary badass in the world spends the first half of the movie like sick.
Yeah.
And like sort of like bumbling around because he's like rusty. Like,
Such a great movie.
What a great turn.
That's the second best country western behind Tombstone. Like, because
come on,
you have the shirt on,
bro.
And I mean,
so Tombstone is in my top 5.
Yeah, one of the best movies of all time.
I sat down with Carla and watched that movie, and she was like, "This is like Shakespearean." And I was like, "That's exactly what it is." Like,
totally.
It, you know, the not just like the rhetoric or like the fact that Val Kilmer should have won like the Academy Award for like best sarcastic shit talk ever in a movie.
Yeah,
but just like all the characterizations, but. Yeah. Oh, dude, Chinatown. Bro, I need you to watch that movie this week and then call me.
All right.
'Cause
I'm going to watch it this weekend.
it's so, and it's older, you know,
Yeah.
so like it's kind of visually dated,
Yeah.
but it's incredible.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to watch it. Thanks.
Chinatown, man.
Thanks for being on, man.
No problem. Thanks.
Appreciate
for having
you.
me, bro. Thanks for the cigar.
Of course.